Old woman picking flowers is shocked to see cops pull a taser on her. It's easy for someone to misinterpret what you say or mean. In fact, it's a normal experience everyone goes through a couple of times in their lives. It's so normal that when it happens, we are almost always indifferent about it. It usually isn't much of a big deal. However, sometimes a little misinterpretation of your words and actions could put you in the balance between life and death. Today's story is about an old lady whose actions were greatly misinterpreted by the police. In order to protect their lives, the officers made a difficult decision which could have easily ended her life. One they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Greetings and welcome to our channel. In today's video, we'll be looking at 3 different unusual stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe to support the channel. Also, press the alarm bell and turn on YouTube notifications on your phone. Make sure you leave a comment at the end of this video. Thank you. Martha al-Bashira was born and raised in Syria. She moved to America where she's lived for 22 years, built a home with her husband in Chatsworth, Georgia. Despite not living in her native country, Martha still applies all the daily teachings that she'd learnt in Syria. Martha and her husband often used to pick up plants around the neighbourhood. Martha, just like her mother used to do, searches for vegetables and uses them for preparing meals. Foraging was both the family's hobby and livelihood. One day, she decided to cross the street to pick some dandelions for dinner. Before she left home, she took the kitchen knife she usually went foraging with. It was one of her foraging spots, but unlike today, she was usually alone when performing her tasks. This patch of forest was owned by the Boys and Girls Club, a national non-profit that funds after-school programs for young children. Tanner, an employee who worked for the club, spotted a knife-wielding Martha a couple of yards away as she entered the property. Tanner immediately called the police because he was intimidated by her. It was around 4:30 p.m. when Tanner made the call. He said, "This lady is walking on the bike trail. She has a knife and she won't leave. She told me she doesn't speak English and keeps walking up the trail with a knife. She's old, so she can't get around too well, but it looks like she's walking around looking for something like vegetation to cut or something." The police operator then asked Tanner if Martha had attacked with the knife. He said, "No, she just brought the knife onto the property in her hand. She didn't try to attack anybody or anything." After the call, 2 officers together with the Chief of Chatsworth Police Department were sent to the scene. When they got there, another employee of the club was the one who showed them the way to Martha and her last seen location. The police easily spotted Martha, who was bent over and busily cutting some dandelions along the path. The police asked her to stop what she was doing, yet, unable to interpret them, she kept on foraging. The police tried to illustrate what they were saying by throwing a pocket knife on the ground and picking it up again. All this was lost on the 87-year-old woman. She just kept on looking at them. This is when they pulled out the stun guns. The police report for the incident said, "We kept telling her to drop the knife. The female would look at us. Her demeanour was calm, even seeing us with stun guns out." Martha walked towards the police officers with the knife in her hands. One of the police officers felt the old woman posed a threat on their lives and fired his taser gun. Martha immediately fell to the ground. They then handcuffed Martha, who was still very much surprised at the whole encounter. She was taken to the Chatsworth police station and charged with obstruction of an officer and criminal trespass. The chief stood by his man's actions. In an interview with Daily Citizens News, he said, "In my opinion, it was the lowest use of force we could have used to simply stop that threat at the time. I know everyone is going to say an 87-year-old woman. How big of a threat can she be? She still had a knife. An 87-year-old woman with a knife still has the ability to hurt an officer." To Martha's family, the police made the issue too much of a big deal. They felt that the police officer tasing of the old woman was completely uncalled for. Dean, Martha's attorney, said, "They clearly stated she was not a threat to anyone and told them she was gathering vegetation. Clearly there was no threat." Even though Martha had recuperated, her mind was still very much plagued by the incident. A simple day of cutting some dandelions had turned into a day spent in jail. The woman was unable to understand how her ordinary lifestyle had turned out this way. Her grandmother, Martha Donny, told Daily Citizen News that Martha was not just repeating the incident over and over in her mind, but also telling them she didn't mean for this to happen and apologising for bringing this on them. Martha was also having trouble sleeping and was very stressed. The Chatsworth Police Department opened an investigation to probe into the matters of the incident. So far, there hasn't been any arrest made for criminal wrongdoings. However, if both parties involved cannot come to an agreement, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation would have to step in and resolve the case. Truth be told, Martha is not the only woman who has had a weird encounter with the police before. As we all know, death can be very painful, especially for the ones left behind. For some, it is very hard to let go of their loved ones. This is the case of 91-year-old Jean Stevens, who at her age had witnessed quite a number of deaths. Jean's husband, James, passed away in 1999. The couple had been married for more than 60 years. It was definitely a hard blow to Jean. Her only best friend had passed away and she didn't know what her next step was going to be. Jean, together with her loved ones, attended her husband's funeral, yet Jean was still very much in a state of denial and just couldn't move on. What she did next is something that would hardly ever cross the minds of many people. Jean had the body of James dug up, just so she could see him again. Weird, right? The groundskeeper felt sorry for the poor old woman that he actually followed through on the request. What's more, she took the corpse home with her and hid it in her garage. As if that wasn't enough, Jean did the exact same thing for her twin sister when she passed away 10 years later in 2009. You might be wondering how she was able to pull it off. She had an old couch propped up against one of the walls in her garage, which she placed her husband's corpse on. For her twin sister, she put her in an unused room in her house. Of course, the corpses would emit some smell, so the old lady was always spraying perfume in the house to mask the scent. Jean was able to get away with it for a while. She made sure her deceased loved ones were enjoying their time. She even treated them as if they were still walking and breathing. Her neighbours never suspected a thing, at least not for a long time. Eventually, they got to know about it and called in the police. The police officers came to her house and removed the bodies, asking Jean why she did it. The old lady said she wanted to be able to touch and talk to her loved ones at any time. Surprisingly, she was allowed to keep the bodies, but only on the condition that she would build a befitting storage area for the corpses, and she did. She built a mausoleum that can hold up to 8 bodies. Whilst this is somewhat eerie, it is a much better option as compared to the first one. Just like Jean's story, there is a house in Hartford, Connecticut, whose interior design revolves around death. Realtors have had and continue to have a difficult time in selling the house. The interior design of this house is downright creepy. There are not a lot of people who would want to live in this house. The house's interior design is primarily made of red motif. There are blood-like designs that cover the walls of the kitchen. Even the cupboards look like they've been slashed with a butcher's knife. It's a horrifying scene. What's worse, the bloody prints are all over the house, including the steps. Compared to Jean's house, this house may not seem so weird. This is because Jean actually had dead bodies stored in her house, yet they both give off the same creepy vibe. What's worth mentioning is that the bloodstains in the house aren't actually blood, even though they may look like it. Behind the house in the backyard is what looks like a gazebo. It genuinely looks like a place for holding satanic rituals. How would anyone be able to enjoy some fresh air with that structure in their sight? Anyways, the house is still on the market and it's not hard to figure out why. The realtor still believes that one day someone will be interested enough to buy it. This is the end of today's video. Would you ever think about buying the last house? Let me know what you think about the stories in the comments below. As usual, please like and share this video to your friends and family. Thanks for watching and see you all next time.